Welcome to Lead Different.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Today's guest is Davin Salvagno. Davin Salvagno is a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and a leading voice on purpose-driven leadership. As the founder of Purpose Point and co-founder of the Purpose Summit, he helps leaders and organizations align purpose with performance and impact. His best-selling books, Finding Purpose at Work and Thieves of Purpose, 12 Mindsets Robbing You of Your Potential, have influenced audiences from Fortune 500 companies to the NCAA and the NFL. He has over 2 decades of leadership experience across multiple industries. Davin now serves as an executive coach and consultant to CEOs and teams, guiding them to build purpose-centered cultures that drive meaningful results. His work has been featured in Forbes, Newsweek, Worth, and Harvard Business Review, and he currently serves as executive editor of Mason Barrow, the publishing house of Gray and Miller. Without further ado, let me introduce you to my friend and yours, Davin Salvagno. Welcome to the show, Davin.
Dan, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the Why Not Leadership Lead Different podcast. I love having conversations about helping people lead differently. Grateful to be on here with you.
You know, we were talking in the pre-show, Davin, about what it means to lead different. And we're talking about the Purpose Summit. You've been on a journey here, Davin. You know, the Purpose Summit has been in Michigan. It's been in Charlotte, and it's moving to Atlanta. So you're on these. I missed a city there. Which one did I miss? Oh, you've been at Notre Dame. Michigan, Notre Dame. You're on a Big Ten tour, but then you took it to Charlotte, North Carolina, and now you're taking it to Atlanta. Every 2 years, the Purpose Summit is moving, and it's growing, and it's getting bigger and better. But as we were talking, you mentioned, you know, you're telling me a little bit about the people that you put on the big stage when you go to the Purpose Summit. And this is good for you listeners, if you're planning to go, and I highly recommend. I know I'm already booking my trip for next year. I'm hoping to lead a session, but if I'm not leading a session, I'm being an attendee, because this is a collection of amazing speakers, companies, and individuals. So Davin, put me down as I'm coming next year. But what I was going to say is, you said the companies that you feature on the main stage are companies that are leading different, and you're on the Lead Different podcast. So let's start with that simple question, and then I'm going to go get into your background. What does it mean to lead different to you, Davin?
Well, you know, a lot of organizations, we're conditioned to focus on success, right? So we focus on a lot of KPIs, we focus on a lot of metrics, we focus on profitability, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But the companies that are making a tremendous impact in the world are focused on purpose and people. They're not just focused on success, they're focusing on significance. They're not just focusing on the return on investment, ROI, they're focused on their return on impact, ROI. And so one of the things that we look for in the world are, who are those companies, who are those stories that are focusing on significance above success, that are focused on purpose and people above profit, that are focused on return on impact, not just on return on investment. And one of the reasons that we like to find those stories and share those is because we want to inspire more and more companies to lead differently the way that they are. Because what we have found is that when you lead through purpose, when you lead through focusing on your people, when you focus on significance, when you focus on impact, all of the other things follow, right? Success, profitability, sustainability, all of those things follow. And so we can have the best of both worlds when we focus on the right metrics.
That's fantastic. And I love the way you put that, Davin, because it's not so much that you're focusing on, because you can, those other things are important. The metrics, the KPIs, all of those things have to happen also. But I think what you said is really important. I want to emphasize that. Focus on the people and focus on the purpose first. All those things will follow. Not necessarily the other way around. If you're truly just focused on the numbers or just focused on the KPIs, maybe you'll take care of your people or maybe not. But this one definitely resonates. I've seen it throughout my career. I was an executive at a Fortune 100 company for many years. And I remember when I was off kilter, when I was focusing on the metrics more than on the people, it was a little, work was harder, life was harder. And when we focused and we put it in the right space and we took care of the people, we took care of making sure we knew our purpose, everything else followed. We had our best year. So you're singing my song, you're playing my language, playing my song or speaking my language, I think is what I meant to say. But Davin, tell us about, the Purpose Summit. So you and I had a chance to meet. It's been a few years. We took the entire Purpose Summit team through a YOS discovery session, and we discovered your YOS and that of your team. So it's been a few years, but the summit has grown. Like I said, you've got multiple locations. Tell me about what the journey's been like. Take us over the last 5 years or even from the beginning of the Purpose Summit.
Wow. Well, from the very beginning, we never decided that we were going to start a summit or grow this movement. It really all started because in 2019, as I was finishing my first book, Finding Purpose at Work, and helping people find purpose in the work that they do and helping companies to do the same, I went on a speaking tour and I met a bunch of other people that were kind of singing the same song, but all playing different instruments. I realized there were all of these different authors and thought leaders in the purpose space. And I started to find company after company that was actually implementing what we were talking about and seeing how it was driving not just results, but impact, how they were not leading differently, but they were making a difference by leading differently. And one of the things that I immediately felt a conviction for is that we need to share these stories with the world. So I had a Finding Purpose live cast back then, which was a podcast that complemented the book. And we were sharing stories of different companies and organizations that were doing this. And one day we decided, what would it look like if we brought them all together? We brought them all together in the same room, provided a platform to share their stories, and then invited companies and leaders who wanted to be like them to come and learn from them and to emulate that so that we could perpetuate this impact across the world. And so that was the very beginning of the Purpose Summit. We had no money, no marketing. I had a friend of mine named Chris Lambert who had an amazing nonprofit in Detroit, and he had just remodeled an old school building in a blighted neighborhood in Detroit. And we partnered with him. We borrowed the school building, and we had, keynote sessions in the auditorium, breakout sessions in old classrooms with breakout speakers drawing on chalkboards, and had a little food court set up in the gymnasium. And we didn't know who was going to come. And 300 people from across the country came, and it was absolutely transformative. So that was the beginning of the Purpose Summit. And then 2020 happened, and we couldn't do the summit in 2020. But in 2021, we came back with it a second year, and we did it in the Detroit market again. And this time, one of the companies that came to the summit was a company called Lippert out of South Bend, Indiana. And Lippert was a publicly traded global company, about 5 million in revenue, 15,000 employees. And they were doing what we were talking about. They were leading with purpose and people. They had this amazing story about how they used to make great products, but now they build great people who make great products. And it's all about building the people who build the products. And I wrote about Jason in both of my books and their story. And they had come to the summit, and their vice president, now chief leadership and culture officer, Dr. Amber Selking, who wrote a great book on winning the mind game, winning the mental game. She spoke at the Purpose Summit, and it was an absolutely powerful talk. And after her talk, she came back and she said, "This is one of the most amazing leadership experiences we've been a part of. How do we partner with you to do it in Indiana next year. And I said, well, where would we do it in Indiana? And she said, well, how about the University of Notre Dame? She had been an adjunct professor there. She was also the mental performance coach for the football team. So she called Notre Dame. Notre Dame was happy to host the Purpose Summit. It then moved to Notre Dame for 2 years. And it was there that it became a global event. People had come from Italy and from London and from India and from Cape Town, Africa, just from all over the place. And it grew and scaled there. And then we felt called 2 years later to move the summit to Charlotte. And in the move to Charlotte, little did I know that we weren't just moving the summit to Charlotte, we also moved our family from Michigan to Charlotte and hosted the Purpose Summit here the last 2 years. Again, a global event. We had people come from Australia last year and the Netherlands. And it's just amazing to see this collaborative of purpose-driven leaders and purpose-driven companies who came together for 3 days to sharpen each other, learn from each other, and then go back and perpetuate impact. And then, as you just said, next year, the summit is now moving to Atlanta, October 19th through the 21st, where it'll be the 7th anniversary of the Purpose Summit.
Man, that's amazing. 7 years. Can you imagine? And you know what? That's my birthday weekend. So that's another good reason to the 19th. Let's see, this weekend, this year, my birthday was on a Friday. So the 19th should be a Monday, right?
It is. It's
It
Monday.
is a Monday.
Day. Yep.
Perfect. So I'll be coming off a trip, but I think I can make that happen. So Davin, was something you said that I want to make sure I follow up on. Well, two things. The first one is I love the idea of building great people who build great products, right? Versus building great products and just that shift that this company was able to make, and you were able to just capitalize on that and teach others about it. I also love the structure of this summit, Davin, where you're putting people on the main stage, companies, big CEOs or big chief people officers who have done this, where they've invested in people and invested in purpose, and their results are there. So you're getting that proof is in the pudding. And then you're going out into breakouts and working with people who have helped those companies or can help those companies that are interested in becoming like those companies that are on the main stage. So kudos to you on a great model. I really, I can see where leaders can just get so much benefit out of that. Do you have a location in Atlanta already, Davin?
It will be at the Interlochen, not the Interlochen, the Intercontinental Hotel in Buckhead, Atlanta.
Oh, Buckhead. I love Buckhead in Atlanta. So that's already a great location. Let me get back to the other part that you mentioned, because this is important and I want to make sure our listeners hear this. Davin, this began as an idea. And I tell my clients all the time, everything great that ever happened began as an idea. And ideas can either get fed and then turn into plans, and then they get turned into actions, which then turn into actual events, actual companies. You've I think 2 companies have been birthed from this idea. What I'd love to hear about is who helped you feed that idea. Ideas are like babies, when infants, when they're an infant, they need to be fed. They are completely dependent on us. They need to be fed, they need to be clothed, and they need to be sheltered. They need to be nurtured, just like an idea. So when this idea was young and new, there's also a lot of danger, right? If we don't do all those things, that idea can die. If we don't feed our babies and we don't take care of them, they will not flourish, and they may very well not exist. Or you can exist as an idea, but never get to that next stage. So tell us a little bit about who helped feed that idea that gave it the next steps to become a toddler, and then a kid, and then a teenager, and a full grown adult, as it seems that the Purpose Point and Purpose Summit have become.
Well, there's so many people. We'd be here for hours if I talked about all of them that I've been blessed to be surrounded with over the last 7 years. But at the very, very start, it started with a handful. My other co-founder in the Purpose Summit, Kurt David, he was speaking on the concept of change. He's a former athlete and focuses on, when your whole life is basketball or football or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden that career is over, how do you find your renewed sense of purpose, and how do you step into that? And that's kind of where he was focusing on. He was focusing on individual purpose. I was focusing a lot more on organizational purpose. And we kind of had this conversation of what would it look like if we could have individual and organizational purpose come together? What would it look like for each individual to know who they are, what their gifts, talents, abilities, and skill sets are, and how they contribute to the greater purpose of the organization? And what would it look like if organizations were equally as interested in who their people are and making sure that they were in the right roles that activated their purpose so that they could go home and feel fulfilled, but also contribute to the company's greater purpose? So Kurt was my initial partner in purpose in the Purpose Summit and Purpose Point. And then there was a few other people in the early stages that came on. There was a guy named 𝘿𝙖𝙫𝙤𝙦, who he ran a company for 20 years that hired me actually to go speak to 12 of their locations across the country. And he caught this vision and decided that their company wanted to be one of our early supporters and sponsors in the summit. And then there was a girl who worked for him named 𝘿𝙖𝙫𝙀𝙁, who actually managed my speaking tour and eventually came over to Purpose Point and became our chief experience officer. And she was the one that actually started running the summit from year 2 forward, all of the logistics, all of the different moving pieces to it. So she came on board, and she was someone who continued to encourage me through this process. So I had, Kurt and Dwight and Lisa, and then there was a gentleman named Adam Ritchie, who has become a dear friend and came into this mix. And he is, his why is better way. So it complements my contribute, because better way is my second one. I know we'll get to that in some way, shape, or form here, but we had these complementing whys that drove this purpose. And so he was really, really great at taking what we were already doing and saying, how can we do that better? How can we do that better? And we were equally focused on purpose and impact. He likes to call himself a recovering engineer. So he has this engineer mindset, but with this heart for people and purpose. And it's a beautiful thing. And then we had Corrine Forrest, who she was a facilitator that I met through Blanchard. Ken Blanchard's one of my lifelong mentors, and we were doing co-facilitating different workshops together. And she came to Purpose Point as our chief learning officer, and she was instrumental in helping shape what some of the learning tracks at the summit would be and some of the things that companies need to do when they leave there. So we had this beautiful initial cohort of people who, again, as I shared before, we were all kind of singing the same song, but playing different instruments. And there was many, many, many more people that came along that journey, from this group of these individual people to hundreds now over the last 7 years that have become part of this beautiful organic community and ecosystem that continue to perpetuate this mission and this vision and this movement from around the world.
Love that. And as you mentioned those names, what's really cool, Davin, is I know some of them. I remember Adam Ritchie. I remember Corrine, Lisa, because they were in that room when we took them through the YOS. As a matter of fact, Corrine is a certified YOS coach. She got trained. And so she's, she and I have had conversations. She's been on the podcast, and we've had the opportunity to talk a lot more about the importance of YOS. You brought it up. So let's spend a little bit of time on your YOS. You mentioned your why of contribute. And what we know, this is what I know, and this is one of the reasons I was just so excited to have you on, is you're a contributor. You want to make a difference. People with the why of contribute want to make a bigger impact, want to make a positive impact in the lives of others. And you mentioned it throughout the conversation already: return on impact versus return on investment. How do we make a bigger impact? Your how is better way, which means that how you contribute, how you've always contributed, probably is always looking for better ways to do things. There's got to be a better way to get this message out. And so that's what probably led to the Purpose Summit. Yes, we've helped a few companies. Yes, thank you so much. I think it was Dwight who hired you. Thank you so much for hiring me, Dwight. But how do we get more people? How can we help more people be as impacted as your company was? There's got to be a better way to do this, and you figured that out. So in everything you do, you're always looking to innovate and find a better way to do it. And your what is to challenge the status quo, which is different than having it as your how, which I do, which means for you, it's that what you deliver is different and out of the box. And this is a different concept. I think that's why you've been able to grow and deliver something that no one else is doing, because you're different than what everybody else is doing. So contribute, better way, challenge. I couldn't think of a better combination for somebody that does what you do and has done the things that you've done. How did it feel to you to finally have language to be able to tell people, hey man, I'm here to contribute. how I'm going to contribute is by finding a better way. And what you're going to get out of me is a different way to do it that's going to be different than everybody else.
Yeah, you broke that down so well. And I remember when we first discovered the YOS and how powerful it was, because what it did is it validated what we were already doing, right? It gave language to what we are already doing. I've often talked about how there's a difference between purpose and why. Purpose is our reason for being, or why is our reason for doing. I know what my purpose is. I have a purpose as an author, as a speaker, as a thought leader, as a business leader, as a husband, as a father, as a musician. I've got multiple purposes, and I can be clear on what my purpose is, but I can lose my motivation. I can lose my why to activate my purpose. So I've got this list of purposes, all these things that I was created to do, but then what's the motivation to do it? And you just nailed it on the head. The motivation, the why to activate my purpose is to contribute in each and every single one of those things, whether it is writing as an author or speaking as a speaker, or, playing music, or what I'm really want to do is I want to contribute. That's my why. And what I have found along the journey is that there's often a better way. There's a better way to lead different. There's a better way to write different. There's a better way to speak different. There's a better way to lead people at work and at home differently. And so it's not necessarily about taking people on a journey to find a better way, but actually sharing the better ways that I have found from others, right? And that's kind of what the summit, we talked about that. I have found all these companies that are doing it. I have found better ways of leading people and leading business, and all I'm doing is shining the spotlight on them because I want to contribute and make an impact. And then to your point, coming back to that how the challenge, one of the things that I've noticed, or actually the challenge, is that no matter whether I'm speaking or writing or whatever I'm doing, there's this sense of conviction where I'm constantly challenging people. There'll be times that I get off stage where sometimes people are like, that was great. And I'm sitting here going, did I just get up there and yell at people for 45 minutes? And they're like, no, you were just speaking with conviction and passion. But what I'm really trying to do is to challenge them to think differently from, hey, we used to think this way, and now if we think this way, here's the opportunities of impact that opens up to. It's the journey that Lippert went on, right? We used to think, hey, we build great products, but I'm challenging you to think differently. What if you built people to build great products? One of the things that I love to share is that there's two types of leaders out there. There are business leaders out there that use people to build their business. And then there are leaders out there that use their business to build people. And that's the shift that Lippert made. So that is what I love to do, is to challenge leaders to think differently, to challenge businesses to think differently, to challenge speakers and authors to write and speak differently in a way that takes their words of conviction and translates them into action and real impact.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much, Davin. What is it that is driving you now? I mean, you're at a publishing house and you're helping authors get their books published, which has got to be so incredibly satisfying, especially since you've got two bestseller books that made such a big impact for you. What led to that transition? I love hearing, and this is something, Davin. Let's get into Davin a little bit, because this is good. I often find that better way people and challenge people, we're really good. I'm a challenger, so we're really good at starting stuff. But then once it's running smooth, it gets boring for us. So we got to go find a new challenge. What else can I make better? What else can I make different? And I see that, starting with Purpose Point, then the Purpose Summit, you're there. And I find myself in that same pattern with companies or volunteer opportunities. Hey, look, I'm here to start it. I'm going to give you all the ideas. But once you get it running and everything's running smooth, you really don't need all my crazy big ideas anymore. You're running smooth. So I'm going to move on and help someone else. Have you noticed that pattern in your life?
I have. In fact, I'm having an aha even right now, that even the start of the publishing company followed the same exact model of wanting to contribute and finding a better way to do it, and then challenging people to tell their stories,
right?
That need to tell their stories. And I didn't realize that until we just had this conversation now. But to answer your question of kind of what led to it, one of the things that I've constantly said is that the greatest measure of purpose is who we help others become. I believe that everything that we go through in life, every set of challenges, trials, tribulations, everything that we learn, even our failures, as my friend Gary Ridge would say, are learning moments. Everything that we go through is specifically designed for a greater purpose, to help us pour into the lives of those around us, to contribute to their lives in some way. So I've looked at everything that I've ever learned, everything I've ever gleaned, and every challenge I've ever gone through as something that I'm at some point going to pour into others or contribute to the lives of others, that's going to help them become someone different or experience something different than they were before had we not met. It's this perpetuating ripple effect of impact. And so after writing 2 books, and as you mentioned, being grateful that they became bestsellers, one of the things that I realized is that there were things that I did well and things that I didn't do well. There are things that I learned that I could help contribute to the lives of those who were on their writing journeys. And I never set out to all of a sudden start helping other authors or start a publishing company. It just kind of happened. And one of the things that had happened was back in 2021 at the Purpose Summit, my friend Scott Jeffrey Miller, who has written 9 best-selling books and was the host of the world's largest leadership podcast, On Leadership with Scott Miller, which was hosted by Franklin Covey at the time. He had interviewed over 500 people. I mean, he was the voice on leadership. And he had just released his 3rd book, and I had released my 1st book. And he had went through my book, and he said, "Davin, you're a great writer, but you need a book with a spine." And he was joking because I had self-published my 1st book, and he wanted to be my literary agent and publish my 2nd book. And he found me, a literary agreement and a contract, and my 2nd book got published. And one of the things that we had started to talk about is how there's actually a better way to publish these books than the way they were traditionally being published. And we wanted to do that for authors. And so last year we came together and started a publishing company to take everything that we had learned from our writing and publishing journeys to contribute to other authors and say, there's a better way to do this. And then to challenge them to actually step into their stories that they have been putting off, and to challenge them to finally write the book. And so it's amazing how, there's just consistency in this model of clear on my purpose and what it is, clear on my why, and understanding that why is to contribute, and that the how is by showing people that there's a better way. And then the what is to challenge them to actually do it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you had a little bit of an aha moment. Always fun to see those live and in person. I'm working with the big department at the University of New Mexico, the gastroenterology department, on Wednesday. And you know how it is when you're working with physicians. They number one, they're very busy. They've gone through so much schooling. And so I ran into a couple of them this weekend because we were getting pushback on just getting the assessment done. But we finally got them all done. And I one of the guys who hasn't done it, I met with him. I said, so what's keeping you? And he said, "Oh man, I'm just so busy. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to be there." I'm like, "Can you take 10 minutes? All I need is 10 minutes from you, and you're going to get a much bigger impact from the session than if you don't know your YOS when you come in." So imagine going into a session where all we're talking about is YOS, and you don't know your own versus all the other people. And I said, "I don't want you to feel left out." He says, all right, I'll go get it done." But I love these are the moments that I like and share a video clip of, here's a guy who's been there, done that, and is a master at chasing purpose and making sure that purpose is infused into everything he does. And you had an aha moment. So thank you for sharing that with us, Davin. I want to talk about one more thing that I think is very important. Listeners, I know struggle with this, balancing family and work. You made a big decision recently. You not only moved the Purpose Summit to Charlotte, but you went ahead and packed up the Salvagno family and said, we're moving to Charlotte. Sounds like you're happy. You mentioned you very much love it down there. I'm sure you don't miss those Michigan winters. But tell us about how that came about, and how's the family doing? We don't have to get personal, but how do you go about that transition? Because I'm sure Mrs. Salvagno had something to say about that. So tell us how you. I think the important thing that people want to hear about is, how do you bring it up? How do you go through that process? And how do you make your family feel as important as everything else that you do?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So the first thing, disclaimer, is that I don't always get this right. I am by no means perfect and have not figured out how to get it right all the time. The first thing that I had to recognize is that there's no such thing as work-life balance. Work-life balance requires a trade-off, right? So when then you're there for work, you're not there for your family. And when you're there for your family, you're not there for work. I had to move my mindset to work-life integration. How do these things all work together? And one of the people who helped me greatly with that was Dr. Amber Sulking in her book, Winning the Mental Game, where she talks about what's important now. And so a lot of times I have competing purposes, right? I've got competing purposes as a author, as a speaker, as a business leader, as a father, as a husband. And so the question is, well, what's the most important need in the moment? And I treat that on literally an hourly by hourly basis. So there's no such thing as working hours, because I'm constantly evaluating what is the most important thing this hour that I need to step into and contribute to, and comparing that to the other purposes that are in play. In regards to the move, that's an incredible different story. So one of the things that had happened was when Amy and I had gotten married, Mrs. Salvagno, she just called her, 18 years ago, we went on a trip from Michigan to Myrtle Beach. And on that trip to Myrtle Beach, we stopped in Charlotte. I'd never been to Charlotte. We stopped in Charlotte, and I was looking out over the city. And I mentioned I'm originally from Philly, and no place has ever felt like home other than Philly. To this day, when I watch Eagles games or Phillies or Flyers games and they show the Philly skyline, it's like a beacon calling me home. But this evening, as we were sitting in Charlotte, where I'd never been, I'm looking out over the city, I felt that same feeling. It was really odd. And I was enamored with the city, staring out over the hotel window. And almost audibly, there was this whisper from God that said, Davin, one day this is going to be home. And I had to question if I actually heard that. And 15 years went by and we never went back to Charlotte. So I kind of ignored the conversation. But when we moved the Purpose Summit to Charlotte, and I came back to Charlotte for the first time in 15 years to start vetting venues and doing site visits, I was staying in that hotel and I'm looking out over the city. And again, I'm enamored with it. And the city had grown a lot in 15 years. And again, almost audibly, there was this still small voice that said, do you remember what I told you 15 years ago? Go home and get your family ready. And I had to come home and tell Amy that I felt we were being called to move to Charlotte. And she was not hearing that. She said, I'm not hearing that we're supposed to move to Charlotte. And so for 6 months, there was this wrestling of, I felt we were called to go. She felt that we were not called to go. And then in January, 6 months later, we had to make a decision on whether or not we were going to re-enroll our kids in school in Michigan. And I was adamant that we weren't going to re-enroll them. And she was adamant that we were going to re-enroll them. And on the very last day, January 31st, that we had to make that decision, I had been praying the entire month of January that if we're supposed to go to Charlotte, God, I need you to tell Amy as clearly as you're telling me that we are supposed to go to Charlotte. And on the very last day, she called me and she was crying and she said, I need to read to you my devotional. And her devotional said, hear, trust, go. And she felt confirmation that we were supposed to go to Charlotte. And 2 weeks later, we packed our family up. We drove down to Charlotte. We spent winter break, 8 days in the Charlotte market. We drove around and figured out where we were being called to move. 2 months after that, we packed our house up, we sold it, and the whole family moved from Michigan to Charlotte. And while we miss the people and our friends and family in Michigan, we certainly don't miss the cold winters.
Wow. Thank you, man. There's so much there. Really good. Thank you for telling that story. The Queen City is hard to not love, and beautiful skyline. You mentioned, the Philly skyline, and what I heard you talking about is slowing down enough to hear, right? So many times we're so busy going from one meeting to the other, one meeting to the other. And you did that for 15 years because you heard that first voice 15 years ago. And then you happen, God has a way to speak to us, right? Happen to be in the same place overlooking that same skyline. And he gave you that second nudge. And that second nudge said, okay, maybe now is the time. And I love the process. I see amazing grace behind you, that it came, you implemented, or you used your faith to guide you. I was playing golf with a friend the other day, and he mentioned, Dan, one of the things we have to do is be quiet just for a little while every day. If you get quiet enough, he says, I've had experience with angels. He goes, they'll touch you. You can physically feel your guardian angel touch you. And it's very subtle, but you got to be still and you got to be quiet. So I saw you use that, listening. I'm reading a book by Matthew Kelly right now called "Slowing Down to the Speed of Joy," and man, was that impactful to me, because again, it's talking about what you experienced. You get quiet enough. People say, God doesn't listen to me. Maybe sometimes we need to listen to Him, right? And that's what you did. Fantastic job so far. Amy and the kids loving Charlotte.
Yeah, family's happy. The first 6 months were a challenge, as you would expect. We've got a high schooler and a middle schooler, so it wasn't easy initially, but they've settled in. And the first year was a transition for us. We're now a year and a half in, and we can definitely look back at the last several months and clearly see confirmation that we're supposed to be where we're supposed to be.
Love that. Love that. And I love when things get confirmed the way it was confirmed for both you and Amy, and you got that confirmation. And sometimes, like I said, you ask the question, but you got to be willing to listen to the answer. And that's important too. Davin, let's talk about one final question I want to ask you. How are you different as a leader today than you were 5 years ago? What's the biggest difference you see in you in the way you lead, and how has it made a positive impact for you?
That's such a timely question. I literally just posted this morning, and not knowing that you were going to ask that. And the biggest difference for me is that 5 years ago, I asked the question why a lot, not why as in YOS, but why as in when things didn't go according to my plan. What what I thought, my vision, my plan, my purpose, my ambitions, my goals, when things didn't line up, I would ask why. Why is this not happening? Um, and I have since learned to change why to what. And again, separate from the YOS model, but what is a different question when we stop asking, why did this happen? Or why did this not happen? Or why do bad things happen to good people? Or why didn't this succeed? Um, why can become a very hopeless question that we don't get an answer to. But when we recognize, I shared my faith earlier, one of my life verses is Romans 8:28, which says, God uses all things, makes all things work together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose, comma, the piece is his purpose there. We often want to put a period, everyone will say, oh, all things work together for my good. That's not what that verse says. It says, all things work together for good, but for his purpose, according to his purpose. One of the things over the last 5 years that I've recognized now is I can actually see all of the things that I was asking why to, and actually now see what the purpose of each of those things were. Every trial, every tribulation, every failure, every success, I can see now, looking backwards in hindsight, what each one of those things were used for and how they all led to where I'm at today, where my family is at today, why we're in Charlotte, why the summit's where it's at, what I'm doing, what I'm giving my time to. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. It hasn't been this picture perfect story. It's been hard. I would actually offer that the last 5 years were some of the hardest years of my entire life. And it could be really easy for us to look in the moments and say, why is this happening? And not change that question to, what is this happening for? What is this going to be used for? And eventually we get the answers to those questions. Not always, but most times that we do. So when I'm leading others, one of the things that I find, one of my gift sets that I've learned is encouragement and discernment. And when I'm walking through things with people, my friend Dwight, who I mentioned earlier today, we defined impact as stepping into other people's worlds. So what I choose to do is focus on being a human being, not a human doing, not focusing on what I need to get done, but focusing on who I need to be. And when I'm with people, I choose to step into their worlds and understand what's going on in their world. And a lot of times they have a question, why? Why is this happening or why is this not happening? And I help to lead them differently and help them to see their purpose in the moment, to see what might be happening, which now gives hope rather than being hopeless. My friend Nick Craig, he's got a great purpose program called Purpose to Impact, where he helps you create a purpose statement for yourself that's kind of fun and gets people to turn their head and say, unpack that more for me. And my purpose statement is to help you taste your story and see that it is so, so good. And what that means is slowing down enough to actually taste your story and see that it is all being used for a greater purpose that in hindsight will be so, so good.
Helping you taste your story and seeing that it is so, so good. Man, Davin, thank you so much. I know we're limited on time. I know I've got to have you back because I've got a list of about 7 more questions that I thought of as you were talking. Love the reference you made there, because often, and we see that all the time, people misquoting a Bible verse or quoting it and taking only what they want. But I love that shift from why to what, because it kind of puts the onus on you. Instead of why, woe is me, why is this happening to me? You're saying, what is happening? Or what am I doing that's causing that to happen? Or what am I supposed to do? Or what is it preparing me for? Those are all just absolutely fantastic and powerful questions, Davin. I'm going to give you the answer to this question because we didn't cover it in the pre-show. The next question I'm going to ask you, all you got to answer is why not? Okay. So this is the easiest question you're going to be asked today. As we come to the end of the show, Davin, I always like to ask one final question. And at the end of that question, I ask this. Davin, that was such a great answer. What do you say we end the show on that note?
That sounds fantastic. I'm happy with ending the show on that note. I really, really appreciate our conversation today, Dan. It was really good, and I'm glad to come back and continue the conversation on another episode.
This was so good. Why not,
so,
leaders?
So good.
You saw we got a little bit of a taste, and we see that it was so good. Gentlemen, please, if you like, do give it a thumbs up. If you learned something today and you want to make sure you share it, put your comments in the comments. We are going to make sure and respond to it, and we're going to share it with Davin. I know he's very generous with his time. You can find him on post very regularly, amazing content. Obviously, he is an executive director for a publishing house. So you're going to get a hold, if you're looking to publish a book. Purpose Summit is up in October 19th of next year. So there's a lot of great reasons to follow the Lead Different podcast. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much for being on the show, Davin, and we'll see you soon on the Lead Different podcast.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.